Welcome to the Garden Talk podcast, where we interview growers from all over the world, both beginners and experts, seeking to learn more about what they know about gardening and how they do things in their garden. Okay, here we are with Ben Koch. How you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast today. I've heard so much about you. Speedrun Seeds. It seems like you are making just a massive wave throughout the community recently. That's all I'm seeing in posts these days is all about speedrun and the work you've done over there in regards to autoflowers. So really excited to dig into a conversation today with you. I know you're a professional agronomist and really regarded as an expert when it comes to autoflower breeding and growing autoflowers. So yeah, let's dive into it.
Let's do it.
So right off the bat, one thing I'd like to ask is, what should people listening know right away about how you do things when it comes to breeding autoflowers?
Differently, I would say. I've been fortunate enough to visit a few handful of breeding facilities for autoflower breeders. And I guess I would describe it as like obsessive compulsive. So we'll start with like just a nice round number. Let's say it's 1,000 plants. And we have a vision in our mind of like, what's the end of the movie? We even like wrote, like, we have a little like community guidebook that has a lot of our vegetative breeding criteria that we focus on. And I think the vegetative breeding criteria is the thing that really has set us apart from what everybody else is doing. So we have a very clear understanding. Let's say we have 1,000 plants of granite haze. We know, okay, we want internodal spacing. We don't really record it down to the inch, but we know if little wide, little tight in veg. Plant morphology. If the lateral branches have even height to them, and it's not the autoflower Christmas tree shape, which we try to breed out of our genetics. So we have a long checklist. I think there's, well, I'm pretty sure I put 15 different vegetative breeding criteria in this book for people, and that is not even maybe a third. So yeah, there's 15. There's 15 different criteria that for little home breeding thing that we put together. But there is a list that goes well beyond that, and if you want me to get into like the type of breeding criteria, I'm happy to list off all our vegetative ones. And then whatever doesn't meet that criteria gets killed. So we kill a ton of plants. So like by the time we get into flower, we've killed 40% of everything that doesn't meet, exactly what we're looking for vegetative wise. And then the transition into flower is where we kill a lot more, because they have to start flowering at a certain point in order for us to maintain that 75-day goal, which is what our goal is for all of our strains. And we know if they don't start flowering by whatever it ends up 33 days, it's kind of the group, because the flowering time can be affected by environmentals. So we kind of just look at the group, and if the ones that are straggling behind, they're not flowering yet, those get killed. Now of the ones that are flowering, they need to start producing frost quickly. We need to see rails on leaves. We need to see those tiny little buds looking great and smelling great. And if they're not producing that frost, they get killed. And then again, we kind of follow through with that vegetative breeding criteria. The plant structure is super important to us. We get so much feedback, which is very validating, about how people will plant seeds and they won't have to train them, because all the branches kind of meet that even height, and that can be achieved without any low stress training, tying branches down, all that kind of stuff. So that's one of our main things that we really focused on. And I think that something that we wanted to see, we didn't really think about the fact that other breeders might not have been doing that particular or looking for that particular trait, but it's sort of become one of the things that speedrun is known for at this point. And then as we get into flower, the internodal spacing, bud density, the terpene profile is super important. Is it true to strain? Is the plant morphology true to strain? Is there color happening that was unexpected? If there is, we set that aside as a purple pheno. And then, long story short, we'll kill all these and we'll be left, let's say, out of 1,000, we'll be left with 50 or 75. We'll go through all of those and we'll say, okay, which ones of these could potentially possibly be winners? Not just the ones that we're going to breed with, but like what could affect. So every single one of those, we tape off a branch or two, and we hit that with the STS, and we reverse like 50 different plants, lower branches. So we end up with this pollen library. And by the end, 1,000 plants, maybe we'll end up breeding with 20 of them, depending on how many strains. If it's one strain, usually with the Granite Haze, we're at F7 at this point. It's really hard to cull stuff at that point because they're all winners. But yeah, if it's 20 plants, then we have all these different options of pollen, and we cut those pollen branches off, take them to another area that's completely separate, and allow those pollen branches in essentially like a flower vase to mature, drop their pollen, and if we line everything up correctly, we have the ability to pollinate same run. Otherwise, we collect it and we'll hit it on the next run. We'll plant the same seeds. But yeah, it's the fact that we're doing like that much pollen collection and keeping notes on not only the pollen pollinating females. So each of those females had that branch cut off. So now it's just a regular female. So we have a Excel spreadsheet where we have all the different traits of all of those pollens, and we match those up with the pollen recipients, and sometimes the pollen recipients are also donors, and it's a very complex and complicated process. And I've got one of the best breeding partners, a guy named Eric. He's the other head breeder at Speedrun, and I couldn't do it without him. But yeah, it's we go really deep, and we have from the beginning, and I think that it just seemed like what made sense. And I didn't realize that other breeders weren't really going that far until I'm not going to name the name, but like I went to the facility of a very large breeder, and I was like, oh, yeah, you can do this with a lot less work.
That's awesome. Yeah. In prior communications I remember you mentioning that your breeding style is kind of non-traditional, and you pointed out some things there that are different from what I usually hear from other breeders, which is pretty cool. Now, yeah, I definitely want to get into a little bit more of the veg criteria. We'll get into some other questions that I have for you. But first, what we do after the first question nowadays is we give thanks to our sponsors. So let's take less than 1 minute to thank our sponsors who help make this podcast possible. Thanks to AC Infinity for sponsoring this episode. Check out their CloudRay Gen 2 oscillating clip fan. Their next-gen clip fan has been re-engineered to provide a long-lasting motor and customizable airflow for all stages of your plant's growth cycle. It features 10 speeds and 10 dynamic wind modes to simulate outdoor airflow and links with UIS controllers for Wi-Fi app control. Click the link in the description section below so you can learn more about their CloudRay clip fans, and the discount code MrGrowIt15 works on both Amazon and their website, acinfinity.com. Stash Blend. Several additives in one blend, so you no longer have to buy individual bottles. Check it out at stashblend.com, link in the description section below, and use the discount code THESTASH. So for these plants, you mentioned 1,000 plants you're planning, just round number to begin.
Yeah.
Are you doing this 100% outdoors, or do you have indoor plants as well?
Indoor as well. So we just work. I'm actually in, like, this is technically my little office corner. But we're in our new grow room that we just built, like, for the sake of social media, so we can take videos and post videos. We have another facility. So we started off at the beginning with a 40,000 square foot outdoor canopy and about 2,500 square foot of indoor grow space, mixed tier 2 canopy, recreational farm in Oregon. That farm was called Sweetgrass. I don't know the hat sitting. I don't. That farm was called Sweetgrass, and there's actually a video of Nat Pennington on the Humboldt Seed Company channel of him coming up and visiting our 30,000 plant pheno hunt of all auto flowers. Dude, we did it in all 5-gallon pots because we wanted to be able to bring those winners inside. And I don't know if anybody has ever ever filled 30,000 5-gallon pots. We didn't buy a pot filler. Like, we were only going to do this once, but the machinery didn't make sense. So that was one of the most nightmarish cultivation seasons of my life. However, we pulled genetics from all around the world, and we found some really workable stuff. I wouldn't say it was really great stuff at the beginning. That's the reason we started breeding, is because we wanted to get multiple autoflower harvests off at our recreational farm, and we could do that, but I'm sure everybody kind of knows the generic autoflower Christmas tree smells vaguely fruity. We call that just the autoflower smell. And it's got big football buds that are super loose and not real frosty. Like, that was 95% of what we had in that canopy. But then there were some that really showed, and some that were the vast majority of that particular strain was like that. But then there was one where it's just like this one. It was I remember there was a Hubba Bubba Smelloscope from Mephisto. Outdoor, that plant just didn't do great outdoors. It was just that strain that year. We bought the seeds, and then we will cross them against themselves, and then we'll do a test run of them indoors. We had an indoor facility, and then like a kind of indoor facility that we don't talk about. So we did a test run indoors. We're like, oh yeah, Hubba Bubba, it looks really great. We put it outside, and we got just these like big clumpy football buds on almost every single one. But it had that haze. It had that like really strong. They changed the name to Hubba Bubba Haze later on, or maybe they crossed it. I'm not sure. But that was one that I just remember of where it had this really weird bud structure. It was frosty, but it had those football buds, and it was short, squat, and very autoflower. But that's what I'm talking about with like promising traits. And then we were able to bring those inside and either hit them with the pollen, or we were able to do it, plant a second batch of them and then bring some females, and for reversal. We did that 100 times over that first year with the 30,000, and then it moved down to 25,000 plants for the second year, 20,000, and then ever since then we've really just been indoor. Once we found what we were working with and we started to really stabilize everything, there's really no need for those big outdoor pheno hunts anymore. It's no longer necessary. Seed reproductions, we'll get back into it. We have a greenhouse that we're revamping at the moment. So like not reproductions, but seed production. So if we want to do we're doing a Granite Haze F7 BX1. So like we might make that BX1 like a huge run, so we never have to grow Granite Haze again.
Man, those amount of plants is incredible. I mean, geez, I can't even imagine. You got to have, I assume, more than just two guys working on 30,000 plants. It's a lot of things to manage there, and the selection process must be somewhat overwhelming. And that brings me to my next question. When you're doing these pheno hunts for autos, what traits are you prioritizing? Now, you already kind of talked about some of these things, right? And maybe this is where it gets into your veg criteria. But you had talked about node spacing. You look at the lateral branching. You want to breed out that Christmas tree shape. You're looking for frostiness, bud density, terp profile. What else are you looking for?
Yeah. I mean, like I can see the 15 that we put in here. I can read off, and then I can talk about like the other stuff that's really not really quantifiable. So we tried to get it so that was um, everybody could answer questions 1 to 10 or number of days from seed. Like that was the only two types of answers that we could plot everything. So start of transition to flower, like that's a big one of like, okay, how many days from seed does it begin its transition to flower? And that's, you can define that in a bunch of different ways. Pre-flowers, a lot of people misunderstand what pre-flowers are. They are the singular sex organ at I think it's called the axis, which is just at a node where a branch meets stalk, or two branches. You will have one singular calyx or bract, or you'll have a pollen sac there. So that's a pre-flower. That's when the plant shows its sex, and then transition to flower is, I really kind of define that as when the plant begins to shift its energy toward fruiting rather than vegetative growth. So that's kind of a tough one to, but then so number of like potential flowering sites. So like, all right, the first thing that we have like is vegetative vigor is huge. So like what's happening from when we start, and we start with seed starting plugs. Like I forgot about these actually. There's plants in here. So we have like a seed starting plug, and then that will go into a 5-inch square pot. So about 5 days in there from seed. Give it a couple days. Let it show a couple true leaves, and then go into a 5-inch square pot. The reason for that, two reasons for that. We're looking for transplant tolerance. We want plants that after you transplant them, they don't just give up, or they don't get, the effect is not negative. Rather, we see them speed up after transplant. And now that also comes down to how you transplant. But if you're transplanting the exact same way for 500 or 1,000 plants, and some of them don't like it and some of them do, you get that's there's a selection trait there. But vigor is huge. So like we have like measuring the plant at 10 days from sprout and then 25 days from sprout. Like what's the difference in growth? How much has it grown from 10 to 25? Because that's a really important time for an autoflower. If you're not, maximizing that period of growth, then you're losing yield. Like every day that you're not getting the most growth, you're losing a percentage point of yield. Whether that, it depends on the stage of growth, but you could be losing 10% yield every day that you're not feeding them properly and getting that growth. And then, branch height uniformity. That's, I've talked about that, but we've done our best to breed and only breed with plants where your lateral branches meet that canopy height, and your apical meristem, your center stalk, almost always it's gonna rise above, but sometimes it's hard to tell which one it is because they're all the same height. So like that's really important for us. Leaf morphology. People will never get away from the indica sativa lie. So leaf morphology, we pay attention to it because when it comes down to, I could have two identical plants, terpene density, bud structure, finish time, but one has fat leaves and one has skinny leaves, and people are going to think they're a different phenotype. So we have to pay attention to leaf morphology, even though we don't really care about it. Although it is important for light penetration, and it does, it does factor into to how the plant grows. So leaf morphology is one that we check off. Stem strength. So just like structural integrity of the plant. Can you grab a lower branch and shake it without it snapping? are the branches starting to, they break and then they heal. You get those big, knots at the branches, and that's something that we pay attention to, because later on they're going to have all that bud weight on them. Early on in veg, we want to make sure we're paying attention to how strong are they, and that's also really due to calcium. Calcium is super important. It's the building block of what produces strong uh, uh, vegetative or structural growth, rather than what people might think silica. It's just like an extra add-on, not necessary. Nutrient tolerance, huge one. So you got to be able to slam these things with nutrients to the maximum level before you're overfeeding. You're finding that line, and that's different for everybody. That's different for your temperature, your humidity, your light intensity, how you're feeding, your frequency of watering. If you're in Autopots, if you're in cocoa, like all these different things, they affect your nutrient tolerance. But genetically, there is a nutrient tolerance factor that needs to be that's our job, is to pay attention to that genetic nutrient. So like no matter what you do to it, this is always going to be superior to its neighbor, one plant versus the other in taking that nutrient load, regardless of environment. And then nutrient requirements also, that kind of fits into that. Like, okay, how much can it take? But how much does it need to stay healthy? It's a different equation, but still really important. Like you could have some where you're feeding at X rate, and some of them are starting to look nutrient deficient, and some of them are doing great. Some of them could take more. Some of them need way more. So like that nutrient requirements is important. Internodal spacing, again, it's important for light penetration. It's really important for preventing fungal pathogen growth, botrytis, powdery mildew. They love when air does not pass through the plant well. So if you've got internodal spacing that's just stacked, these big donkey dicks, which autoflowers can be famous for, your yield might benefit from it, but if you lose 40% or 20% of your yield to botrytis, what was the point of internodal? It's also, it gives them a more photoperiod like structure, which I like visually. I think just from the perspective of like autoflowers have not yet plateaued in their trajectory toward being as good as photoperiods. And I think that branch structure, internodal spacing, really plays a role there, and making like these nice, pretty branches that you see with photoperiods. Transplant tolerance, we talked about that one because we transplant again. So once from the plug into the 5-inch, and then at 25 days or so, 20 to 25 days after it goes into the 5-inch, it'll go into a 3-gallon or 5-gallon, depending on. But we do 3-gallon in the traded grows, and they do it fantastic. So transplant tolerance, pest resistance. It's difficult. If you have pests, you can answer that question. If you have no pests, then you can't really say your plants are pest resistant. You just didn't get them. It's like nothing that, if you have no pests, you cannot point to a single thing that you're doing as the reason you have no pests, because maybe you weren't going to get them. So that, I've seen people talking about products where it's like, oh yeah, well, 10 out of 10 people had no aphids. It's like, were those 10 people going to get aphids? So yeah. Fungal pathogen resistance. If there is some powdery mildew, if there is some bud rot happening, that's really in the vegetative stage. We're talking more about Pythium and Fusarium, which home growers that's probably Greek. Pythium, stem rot is stem rot and root rot. Fusarium is, I have a agronomy. My partner in the fertilizer company, the best agronomist in the world. I'm convinced of it. I've met a lot of them. There's not that many agronomists. Sorry, I've got a cold, so if I feel like I sound super stuffy. But anyway, the best plant and soil brain that I have ever come across. His name is David. Uh, and he will talk for hours about fusarium. But fusarium, I would say it's on the level of like hoplite and viroid, where people are not talking about it right now. So let's just say you have a mom, a white runt, and this mom has become super difficult over the course of the last 15 years. You used to get much better yields off of it, and you didn't have to baby it, that strain as much. Now, it's genetically declined. No, it's probably fusarium. There is no genetic decline like that on taking a mom off, a clone off of a mom and making a new mom like that. Almost always it is a fungal pathogen, and people just don't know. They don't take it to be tested, so they don't know that they have fungal pathogen. So I'm not expecting a home grower to really be able to answer that fungal pathogen resistance, but we put powdery mildew, so that's one that you can see. Water uptake and irrigation requirements. So especially in autopots, how fast are they drinking that water? And if you're able to keep separate data plant by plant, that's great. If you've got like 2 or 3 plants of a similar phenotype in an autopot in a tray to grow, you can compare those two in groups. Stem rub aroma. There's a lot you can tell from that stem rub. That comes with experience for sure. And then leaf and shoot color. So your branches, do you have just like genetically purple branches? And then do you have purple leaves? Or are you seeing nutrient related or environmental related color starting to appear? How's that color effect starting to appear in veg? And then the last one, number 15, is the first appearance of the female pre-flowers. So that's what we put in the book. And I have been talking for a long time, so I feel like I don't want to.
No, it's incredibly detailed. I am so thankful that you are transparent about it. You're coming on here and you're telling us how you do things, and that's something we really like to have on this podcast is people that are able to reveal their techniques. So other people that are maybe tuning in could potentially have some takeaways.
We sent these out with packs for free. We're not selling these, we want our customers, we want everybody to see what goes into it because we're proud. We're super proud of it. We're like, I'm really proud of the breeding process and the criteria that we've come up with and the ranking systems that we have.
So that's for veg. Do you have one for flower as well?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to go through every single nitty gritty detail. You can go through a handful of them.
I won't go through every single one. Yeah, yeah. I'm just gonna kind of bounce through because Speedrun shines in the vegetative breeding criteria. That's how we get these giant plants. Because you talk about people getting. I got texted yesterday. Or my Instagram got taken down, but there's a guy on Instagram, 710 Grow Ohio. I don't want to say it wrong. Whatever. He just pulled a 16-pound wet plant, Final Boss F2, seed to harvest in 90 days. So we'll see what that turns into dry. But like, he's in Autopots and he's following our feeding recommendations. There's a synergy between Autopots and autoflowers. I'm sure you're aware of this. I'm interested to hear your perspective. So like between Autopots and photoperiods and Autopots and autoflowers. Do you see a major difference in the behavior of the plants and the synergy that happens between one versus the other?
So I haven't grown autoflowers in autopots. So I don't have an answer for you.
You want to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using the tray to grows now. I love the tray to grows. I am due for an auto run. Usually I'm doing photos, but I am due for an auto run. So
tell me about the photos in your autopots from before autopots to autopots. So like your experience with the like your growing photos, however you were doing it before, and then when you switched to autopots, what kind of differences did you see?
Oh, night and day. I mean, the growth rate is so much better. You got to imagine because as long as it's the right medium, right? If you have too heavy of like peat, for example, versus cocoa, the autopots don't really work as well. Now, that was without that perlite layer, the 2 inches of perlite that was a part of their old recommendation was to add 2 inches of perlite, then the soil. Now you can get away without doing that.
In your container, two
Right.
inches. Right, for drainage. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But lately I've been using bioflower soil, and that's more cocoa heavy. And
Right.
so a lot more aeration, and having that on the autopots without that 2 inch of perlite layer at the very bottom of the container, it's completely fine. And I'm seeing some of the best growth I've ever had under that automated watering. So I think it really comes down to just the right medium. But yeah, it's so much better to have the consistent moisture level along with the amount of oxygen that's needed in the root zone versus like hand watering and like over watering and stunting. And yeah, there's a huge difference between autopots and other methods.
Yeah, you said it. You said it. The biggest problem that home growers and commercial growers have is they don't. Not, I don't want to say they don't know how to water. It's certain ways are better, and there is no way to argue that. So it's like you can hone in your skill with Rockwool cubes or cocoa OTBs. You know, because I before I did speedrun 100% of the time, I was doing consulting, and I've consulted for or played a meaningful part in the cultivation decisions of probably like 70 farms at this point. Like me and David used to travel around the country and just hit farm after farm after farm and see how they were doing things and make recommendations. There was this multi-million-dollar facility I walked into. It was in flower, more powdery mildew than trichomes. I've never seen anything like it. I still have pictures on my old. I think I put them on Google Drive. It was I knew I was thousands of miles away from my own facilities, but like I didn't even want to get the clothes that I was wearing in Michigan. Like I didn't want to get those covered. It was crazy. It was crazy. We were like, you have to kill this whole room. And he's like, no, we can save some of it. But yeah, like I've seen I have touched so many commercial facilities. And at this point I've talked to so many home growers. Like there are so many ways. There's that home grower who's been doing it for 10 years the same way, and he got 10 years of experience. He knows what he's doing. It's like, to me, it sounds like you've got 1 year of experience 10 times over. Like if you're not trying new things, if you're not expanding your horizons, then it's not, people not using Autopots and getting poor results with the way that they're watering. It's not necessarily their fault because there's no set way of doing this. There's no agreement. Nobody agrees on anything in this industry. So the fact that Autopots just work better, and I think autoflowers have more. You have less control with your photos. You have more control. You decide when you go into flower. You decide if you want to let them recover for an extra week after something happens to them. You decide how many moms you keep, like especially with breeding autoflowers versus breeding photo periods. It's like a kindergartner could breed photo periods, but autoflower. But with photos, cultivation wise, you have the ability to control so much, and with autoflowers you don't. So I think that's where my mind goes, where I think like there's a higher level of synergy with the autoflowers than there is with the photo periods, and it's because I have not yet seen any other way to make autoflowers as happy as I've seen them in Autopots. And the ability to do that is cheating. It's almost like cheating. It's such a leap forward in the potential for what autoflowers can be and they can do. And me, here breeding, I'm breeding. So like me, I'm growing. I've got 50 Trader Grows in this room, or 40 Trader Grows in this room, and all of my plants, this is a first run in this brand new grow room. Everything's new. Lights are new. Every single thing is new. So I was expecting like a shit run because that's, your first run always you have problems. Um, sorry, hold on one sec. I have like the greatest customers in the world, and I think he knew that I was doing this today, so he
Oh,
DoorDashed me crumble cookies.
oh nice.
I thought that was a neighbor. I was like, I told you not to. Yeah, I was talking about just the amount. The gap is so much bigger with autos, and the benefit is so much bigger with autos, and there's so many more ways that people f up autos that I think that's where, in my mind, there's like more to be gained with Autopots and autoflowers than there is with photo periods. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it takes the guessing right out of it. If you don't have some sort of automated watering in there, you're guessing, right? You're either filling the grow pot, lifting it up, whatever technique you're using. Some people use moisture meters, right? But you still have to guess how much water you're going to add to that grow pot versus with an auto pot, well, it's just all automated, right? It goes gravity fed, it wicks up as it needs to. So it completely takes out the guesswork. And that's one of the reasons why I like it so much. I'm actually wearing an auto pot shirt right now. So
Oh,
shout out
nice.
Autopot.
Yeah, I was talking to Luke. Yeah, I was just talking to Luke last night. Um, so yeah, shout out Autopot USA for sure. Um, you said moisture meters. Are you talking about like the stab-in probes, or just like the old-fashioned little green ones with the little wet, not wet when you stab it into your soil? Like,
The newer ones, like BlueMat has one,
right,
EcoWit
okay,
has one, AC Infinity is a handful of companies now
yeah,
that have those moisture meters.
right, yeah, yeah. To me, like those line up really well with the cocoa OTB open top bag cocoa and the Rockwool style growing, like Rockwool stacks, and that's how the entire commercial industry is either in cocoa or Rockwool, and they're growing, with these re- reusable, or sorry, recyclable, I guess, plastic bags full of cocoa, or a stack of, whatever their a 4-inch Rockwool on a slab or whatever. And that's, you stab a bunch of probes into those to see where your moisture is at. You get a whole readout. And for home growers, though, I don't know. I would have to look at what AC Infinity is offering as far as like, moisture meters, and like the data that you get out of that. Um, but I have seen the light. I'm all auto, but like I can't stress enough. Like I've seen people feeding not enough, and their plants look like way better than they should. So yeah, it's and I've never tried like an AC Infinity self watering base, so I can't speak to other ones like that.
You mentioned feeding, and I want to actually transition this conversation to that, in particular, feeding autoflowers. Now, this is something that a lot of folks had mentioned that autoflowers don't need as much nutrients as photoperiods. What's your take on that?
Not true. Uh, you do not need to listen to like Royal Queen Seeds autoflower recommendations for their, like ILGM, they have my seeds on their website, so I'm like kind of contractually obligated not to say anything bad about them, but they have played a part in they are doing a lot right now to improve the quality of their educational content online. Um, like, and I think if one customer sees some better educational content and they get access to better seeds at ILGM, then I am proud of them for making that step, whereas other white label companies are not. So like that's my reasoning for uh involving myself with them, is because like, hey, if somebody can get better seeds, and like we're looking into writing some of their educational content, but yeah, all that stuff is old. Like, okay, that information can go stay with the lowrider seeds back in 2002 and get dusty. Like, you can feed autoflowers heavier than some photo periods. Think about it like this. I call it, there's a growth stage that photo periods don't have, called the rapid vegetative growth period is what I call it. It's right after it's like the middle of veg through the beginning of flower. And now just because there's buds on the plant does not mean it's not behaving in a vegetative way. I would say so. It's like when your plants start to explode in growth, that's the beginning of the red vegetative growth period, and then it ends like right before the flowering stretch. So there's this period with autos where you are required to provide the maximum level of nutritional content or fertility that plant can physically handle before it starts to show signs of toxicity. And people will say, I feed half strength Fox Farm and my plant looks great. It's like, okay, let's talk about hidden hunger. Hidden hunger means your plant looks green, it looks happy. Let's take a leaf tissue analysis and find out the content of the mineral content of your leaves and compare it to the objective correct levels of mineral content that need to be in a plant. Like these are numbers that, okay, there's some people disagree a little bit, 6% calcium versus 4% calcium. But basically, we know in the world of agronomy, not just for every crop, that you take leaf tissue samples and you know, okay, this is how much calcium should be in my plant tissue at day 44. You know, so like we have that information already. Okay, that's objective. So we can take your plant and check it against that objective data, and time after time, these autoflowers that are fed with, I don't say anything negative about any breeders, and now I'm starting a nutrient company. I hesitate to say anything negative about other nutrient companies as well, but like advanced nutrients, you know, they are responsible for so many misconceptions. You go to Advanced Nutrient, you try to find one of their lines. How many products are in every line? It's like 25. Like they're just throwing shit at you, and they're responsible for phospholoading, for that super high phosphorus that's completely unnecessary, that's just going into the groundwater and harming the environment for these commercial grows. And for home growers, it's just unnecessary. Like there haven't been any studies that have shown the amounts that are generally in, especially if you're using half strength. But the ratios of nutrients are critical, and your nitrogen, your potassium, your calcium should all kind of be up here, and then your phosphorus is going to be like down here. You know, like there's a ratio, and calcium gets left out. Magnesium and phosphorus are kind of on like the same level, but then the nitrogen, potassium, and calcium are like higher. So that ratio, it's not just how much you're feeding, it's what you're feeding. And finding that ratio, like you can make it. You can go buy jacks and you can tweak their feeding schedule. And you can make a really solid, you know, you might need some extra potassium, get some potassium sulfate or whatever. But like there is an ideal ratio and upper limit of how much you can feed autos, and it's right on par with photos. Sometimes I think they need more calcium than photos do because of that crazy growth, that explosion of growth. How do you build all that plant matter that quickly to get to 16 pounds wet in 90 days without a ton of calcium? You can't do it. It's not possible. So you throw away anything that you, any beliefs about, not you in particular, but you know, anyone listening, throw away any beliefs about feeding autoflowers at half strength. And then also, I think heavily amended soils, living soil. I love this question. How do you define living soil?
I had a conversation with a gentleman a couple weeks ago. Living soil is when you are relying on the microbes in order to break down those amendments in order for the plant to uptake. Other people are going to say, well, you need more than that. You need worms in there. You need a complete microbiome in that soil that's going to be completely cycling nutrients, and you're not going to rely as much on the actual amendments. What's your take on that?
So microbes are on everything and in everything. So uh, first of all, so what you're talking about is called mineralization. When your microbes are the primary way that you're taking your organic matter, your carbon sources, these big organic molecules, and breaking them down. There's a few ways that they can break down. So let's just say, you have a soil and you're putting all this organic matter into it, like chicken manure, and you're putting in uh, uh, like oyster shell, uh, all these different things that need to be broken down. That's not a good example of organic matter, but alfalfa meal, whatever it is. So you have dissolution, which is where if I take something like alfalfa meal and I put a bunch of it into a cup, I pour a bunch of water into the cup, and then I strain it after a couple hours, the nutrient content that's in that water, that's dissolution. It's dissolved into that water. Then there's slow dissolution. There's dissolution that takes much longer than just that couple of hours. It breaks down over time. The types of bark that you'll see in some soils, like those break. They call them ancient fur or whatever. It's BS. But like certain organic matter will just break down over time. Light and heat and water, they all break it down, physically erode it, all that kind of stuff. And then the third most important is, it's probably the first or second most important is mineralization, the microbe activity in your soil that is taking that organic matter, breaking it down into plant food, which is ions, nutrient ions, nitrates, phosphates. You got your calcium, Ca2+, that's a calcium ion. You went from calcium carbonate, which is not very soluble, your dolomite lime or whatever. I think that's calcium magnesium carbonate. You're taking these things so let's just say the calcium and magnesium that are in your heart, if you have hard water, that hard water buildup. Obviously, it's not soluble because it's building up and water is washing over it over and over. That's calcium and magnesium, but it's not soluble to water. So you take some microbes in your soil and you take those molecules and you break away that calcium or that calcium ion. You break away that magnesium ion. And the power of your microbial activity is it varies like crazy. Use a product like Recharge or whatever, and then you take a look how many. I think they're changing the requirements for how they state on the back of the package, like propagules per gram or whatever, colony forming units, whatever. If it's a bacillus strain, if it's a trichoderma, which is a fungus, there's a throw crap at the wall theory where it's like, okay, I got my trichoderma harzianum, I got my all my different bacillus species, I got 3 different species of mycorrhiza. I've seen some that even have your glomus species of mycorrhiza. I've seen some that have had ecto instead of endomycorrhiza. Ectomycorrhiza only works with trees and shrubs. And they just throw it in there anyway because why not? People don't know. So these microbe products, just like heavily amended soil or really amended soil, it's more art than science for a lot of people. There's a science to it. Very complex science. The people who are selling and making these products, they're not very complex scientists, oftentimes. There's a lot of art there. There's a lot of throw this cooking. It's like cooking. Making a really good amended soil is like cooking. It's I've got a great recipe. I've tested it over a long time. A lot of people have tried it. They say it's delicious. But okay, take your soil at day 3. What is the mineral content that's available to my seedling at the 3rd day of life? At day 45, what's the mineral content in solution? So let's just say, you do, it's called a saturated media extract, where you take your soil and you take a cup of soil, you take a handful, you fill up your cup, and then you saturate it, which means there's no water pooling on top, but it can't take any more water. Like the amount of water that it can take before it starts pooling up on top, right? And when you're saturated, any real, like a looser soil, if you shake the cup, it kind of jiggles a little bit. Like it's a saturated media. And then you pour your distilled water. This has to be distilled or good reverse osmosis water. Pour your distilled water in. I think Aquafina is a good reverse osmosis if you need it. Pour that in, cover it loosely, let it sit overnight, and then take a spoon or something and just kind of use it and then dump out the water. Hold the soil back, dump out the water. Test your EC, test your pH. And then you can send that water off to a lab. That'll tell you, okay, what's available to my plants right now. These companies aren't doing that. And the fact that they're not doing that makes me stay away from them. Because I can control what my plants are getting. I can control what your plants are getting if I'm selling you a nutrient. If I'm selling you an amended soil, I would have to go through some of the most complex biology, plant and soil science. It falls under the purview of agronomy, but it's like that's not my expertise is soil microbiomes and dissolution rates and mineralization rates of which amendments you put blood meal, you put bone meal. Like, okay, a lot of this stuff, it'll just dissolve immediately and then it's done. That first watering, if you flush it out, it's gone. It does not come back. Like there's a little bit, calcium carbonate, whatever. In blood meal, bone meal, whatever. There's a little bit that dissolves. Like I said, you pour it in a cup and then you have that dissolved part. That dissolved part, it's a one-trick pony. It's Daffy Duck. I can only do this trick once. After that, it's slow dissolution and mineralization. And there's a lot of claims that are made that are not legitimate. I don't think living soil exists as what people call it. Living soil is cocoa with recharge. Now I have living soil. It's alive. Cocoa is alive anyway. There's microbes. There's microbes crawling on your eyelids right now. Microbes are everywhere. So everything's living. Nothing is dead unless it's pasteurized. So living soil is a marketing term, I believe, to sell more expensive bags of soil. People who have worms and a great microbiome, absolutely their soil is living. But living soil as a term, I think it's confused and tricked a lot of people into buying something that they maybe got charged more for than they should have.
Yeah, there's so many marketing tactics out there that deceive the home grower or commercial growers in general, and it brings them down the wrong path for their own personal profit. And yeah, I'm not a fan of that. But yeah, man, what a conversation. We're coming up to the hour mark here. Let us know, where can the listeners find you? And is there anything upcoming in the future that you had going on that you want to talk about?
Sure. All the plugs. So our Instagram just got taken down. I don't know if it's coming back. I did the appeal thing. So if you can't find us on Instagram, that's why. r/Speedrun Seeds is our subreddit. And then the r/Autoflowers subreddit also is, I think, the most important community for autoflower everything on the internet is our Autoflowers subreddit. So if you're not already on Reddit, or if you are on Reddit and you're not checking out that subreddit, go check that one out. And then there's ours too. our subreddit is where I announce, sales and drops and stuff, and that's where that's my closest communication with the community. We also have a cell phone text number if you're a customer and you're in the US and you need 405-237-9524. You send a text message, customer or somebody who has a question. We always try to get back to people within about 24 hours for that. And then, other than that, I do YouTube live streams. We're Speedrun Seeds on everything, or we were on Instagram. But Speedrun Seeds, we have a Twitter and a Facebook group that I haven't been on. I'm not a huge fan. I don't like Facebook, so I kind of stay away from that a little bit. But we do have a big Facebook group. It's not fake. It's just I'm just not really there very often. And there is a Twitter. There's a Twitter also. I should probably take more advantage of. So that's where you can find us. As far as we just launched a new website. So we have a lot of stuff coming that it takes a little bit of time, but launch the new website. I think we're super happy with it. It's so much snappier and faster than the old one. So if you had a bad experience with our website back in the day, which there's probably quite a few people who did, and then all of our merch, we just got all of our merch in. So we have our speed starting trays. This is like the only autoflower. These poor seedlings have been away from the light. I forgot about them. I'm surprised that they sprouted, all 6 of them. But yeah, this is like the only autoflower seed starting tray that's been made. I hand designed this thing and to have air pruning, air gaps at the bottom, so that taproot right there that will air prune away, and then you'll end up with lateral root growth where the moisture is, which is touching the sides of the plastic. So I hand designed that, and these are very specific plugs that we're using that are great. So yeah, we sell these with the plugs, and then the trimming scissors, the pots, all that stuff just landed, and then I have a separate company called Full Auto that is launching. We're sending out the soft launch kits very soon. We're sending a couple of them to Autopot USA, so they're going to be doing a test run of it. I believe that'll be public, so they'll be running that. And then there's about 25 other people. But yeah, so this is just the first one part of it. This is like the test. This is the version 1 label. But yeah, so it's a 3-part. Ready, aim, fire. It's called Full Auto. It's called Ready, Aim, and Fire. It's the simplest fertilizer you'll ever use, and the only autoflower fertilizer out there that makes sense. There's only one other. It's called Bonnie and Clyde. From I forget the name of the company right now. If you look up Bonnie and Clyde autoflower fertilizer. I would love to take this opportunity, and they would sit down with me and have a conversation about what makes their autoflower fertilizer an autoflower fertilizer. I'm super open to chat and talk about it, because we've put so much effort into what do autoflowers need differently, and it's only 3. There's no CalMag, there's no bud booster. It's just 15 milliliters per gallon of Ready and 15 of Aim. And then as you get into the middle of flower, it's just 15 of Aim and 15 of Fire. The simplest nutrient line ever. You require absolutely nothing else. We have a microbe product that we're launching also. We're thinking that one's going to be called Payload. Yeah, so soft launch of this is happening right now this week. And then the official launch will be probably closer to when this comes out, maybe about a month after you hear me saying this. The fertilizer is big. It's a separate company. I'm involved with Speedrun and I'm involved with Full Auto, and then I have a business partner who runs a consulting business, and I'm not involved with his business and he is not involved with Speedrun. But together, we did Full Auto, and he's the guy that I learned everything I know from. I'll be doing YouTube videos with him. Super super lucky to be able to be working with him. And then I wanted to say thank you to Mad Scientist.
Dave Baker, yeah, he's been on the
Okay,
podcast before. He's actually the one that connected us. So yeah, big
yeah,
thanks
I want
to
to say
him.
thank you to Dave. Dave's awesome. He grows crazy plants, and Dave is just a really good friend. I don't know how often you talk to Dave. Dave is, yeah, he's just like a fantastic friend. If there's something going on, he texts you. You know, he's willing to sit there and listen to me rant about whatever it is I ranted about that day. Really good guy. And then also Jim Yoda for the thank you very much for the crumble cookies that you sent during the during the filming of this podcast. I really appreciate that. And yeah, Autopotamus also. You guys have talked with him before? Or?
I've had him on the podcast. Yep.
Yeah.
Great conversation. It was awesome.
He's one of the reasons that we are where we are. He's been awesome. Nova Cotton also is a really great grower. He does YouTube videos. Yeah, so all the people that have been involved with kind of helping me along the way. I can't name everybody. Daphne, I have to name Daphne though. So yeah, if this is like I'm receiving an award, but it's relevant because these are the people that kind of put me in the circle where I got linked up with you. So I appreciate all those people.
For sure. I appreciate you coming on here. I'll definitely have a link to Ben's some sort of social media or YouTube page or something down in the YouTube description section below. So make sure you click on that and give him a follow. Definitely want to give a shout out to the folks on Patreon as well. Patreon.com/MrGrowit. 100% of what is donated through Patreon goes right back into the podcast. You help keep this podcast going. So thank you. The folks being scrolled on the screen right now are in the producer tier. Special thanks to you for your contributions. Ben, I have a long list of questions here, and we didn't get to most of them. I'd love to have you back on the podcast at some point. I think we can get deeper into the conversation. Maybe sometime next year or something like that, we can get you back on. And if you have any questions for Ben for the next episode, drop it down in the comment section below. Love to read through them. Ben, thanks so much for coming on once again. And yeah, hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, thank you for having me. I feel like I ranted through this entire episode, but I had a really good time doing it. So I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Take care. We'll see you in the next week. Peace out.